Which arm is it, Endeavor? Which one? Oh! Okay, people, so as I'm reading My Hero Academia chapter 276, an old song comes to mind. An old Notorious B.I.G. song, but it's so fitting considering everything that Shigaraki is doing and about to do. And that song roughly goes like this. Somebody got to die. If I go, you got to go. Somebody got to die. Let the gunshots blow. Yo, Shigaraki about to fuck all these dudes up. This is so... I'm not gonna lie, man. I never in a million years thought that I would be this hype. This on the hype train for Shigaraki. Tomura has totally revamped and just changed my perception of him as a villain, him as a character in the series. He's changed the damn series at this particular point. Like, this don't even feel like we're reading the same shit anymore. Like, from the... oh my god! This chapter of My Hero Academia yet again. I'm not gonna lie. Last week with no chapter, I was heartbroken. I was like, this is so good. How you doing this to me right now? And getting this chapter again. Ah, it's so... on the field. Let's talk some My Hero Academia greatness! Or should I just call it Shigaraki greatness? Because let's be real, he's the one running the show, people. Oh my god, one arm! Which arm is it, Endeavor? Which one? Oh!
I say we gonna do what we do, no matter how you move, make your move. That's how it be, though.
So this chapter of My Hero Academia, chapter 276. The way it opened up, already it feels as though this is an even grander scale version of like the battle between All Might and All for One, or you know, the My Villain Academia stuff that we got last year. They even start talking about some of the past events from a year ago and shit like that at this particular point, because we got a helicopter you know, basically surveillancing the scene. I think they're a news reporter if I'm not mistaken, and they're talking like, yo, already a third of this, I think they said, was it 2/3 or a third of the city? Yeah, a third of the city has been reduced to rubble, and it's only continuing. It's not like the battle is over or anything like that. So this is going to potentially, and not even potentially, I truly believe this is going to dwarf every battle that the series has had up until this point. This is going to make all of it, the last year's stuff with Shigaraki versus Destro crew and all of them, the All Might versus All for One battle, just everything we've seen thus far is it's kiddie play compared to this shit, because like Shigaraki, bro, Shigaraki, and oh my gosh, definitely a couple of things to note in those first 2 or 3 pages of like, you know, just giving us kind of a recap, not necessarily recap. It was just like a small recap, I guess you could argue, whatever you want to say, but really the last of those 2 to 3 pages is where you really get a couple of things to think about. For starters, it says the last text bubble on those pages is, where is Japan headed? And a lot of people have been theorizing that this is going to be the end of, you know, heroes running Japan as we know it. The villains is going to run shit at this particular point. The way society has been in Japan is going to come to an end after all this. So I think there's a possibility that that could be foreshadowing that. That's one. But also, we see All for One. He's still locked up, but he's there smiling. And that's ominous above all else, because you got to think, like, I'm sure he's waiting for his student to come and rescue him and get him out of there, right? And once he does, like, there's a couple ways that it could go, of course, but just think about it. If Shigaraki has his way, one of the people that all might struggle to take this dude down, All for One, and then you got Shigaraki on top of that, and we don't got nobody in sight that is even close to the level that All Might was, this is a very serious problem, and the bodies is going to hit the floor, people. Like, oh, such a way to start the chapter, just giving you an idea of like how fucked up of a situation we're in. And to be honest with you, seeing the panels that they showed of, I believe it was Deku's mom, Bakugou's mom, Todoroki's sister, mother, and brother, it kind of really plays into, if you see my last video, which you definitely should check it out, because I dropped a lot of gems in it on the last chapter of My Hero, but also some theories about how it's all going to play out, because it's like, why is it showing all the relatives of the 3 main, or what I refer to, the big 3 in My Hero Academia, you know, the 3 main characters of the hero side, Deku, Bakugou, and Todoroki, is showing their family members. And just imagine if the heroes have to retreat, either leaving Japan completely or something like that, what's going to happen to their family members? Are they going to have to grab their family first and then flee, and like, you know, they could go to America, and we're going to have like the American heroes team up with the Japanese heroes? Like, there's so many ways this could go, but I'm looking at a lot of things things now, because this is the most serious this series has ever been. And don't get me wrong, there's been some serious shit. Stain the hero killer, serious shit. A lot of, you know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of serious stuff. But I'm looking at everything like, yo, this is potential foreshadowing for disaster. These are the calms before the storms. These are giving us an idea, an update on these characters to see what is really about to happen, because I don't see this ending good at all, let alone, you know, there's no good end in sight for this right here, this battle. But also, I don't see this ending, this portion of the story, without a major death. And it's not that I want it or whatever, although I wouldn't be mad at it. I'm just saying, because that will show the impact that Shigaraki has had and everything that was done to him, you know, what it brought forth. And I mean, we already had the death of Crust and I think another no-name hero or whatever, but those are light work. Those are light work. Like, I'm waiting to see what's really gonna go down with everybody around. And I don't know who Horikoshi is going to be comfortable with pulling the trigger on. That's a big beloved character, if any at all, but I don't see this ending without at least one major death leading into whatever is going to happen next, whether there's a part 2 time skip and we flee out of Japan, or there's a part 2 time skip here in Japan and the heroes are all underground hiding, something along the lines of that. But again, it's just all bad, because then we cut to Shigaraki and he's on a warpath. He's telling over the communicator, kill everyone you see, and I'm like, you monster. Oh man, like, to be honest with you, and I remember at the time I was really in hype mode when the whole All for One versus All Might stuff happened, and I felt like, oh man, this is a real freaking villain. And not to discredit any of the villains prior to that, but it was just, he felt like a classic, really strong villain that, holy shit, how do you stop? And this is what Shigaraki is really feeling like. But I'll be honest with you, because we've had more of a connection with him, because we've grown with him, because we've seen him come from the slums of being a broke, no-name little 2-bit criminal to where he's at right now, it feels way more impactful for me. Like, right now, I would argue that this is the climax of what I felt, not even just story-wise, that it's probably narrative-wise the climax of My Hero Academia's first half or whatnot, but it also just feels like the climax of just the best of what we've gotten thus far. Like, this feels so freaking hype. Like, you got the main villain ordering hits. And is it just me, or did this chapter just put Shigaraki, like, I already knew dude is strong, dude is really freaking strong, but this chapter showcased him on an even higher level, because you got Endeavor. He uses one of his sidekicks, I believe the sidekick's name was like Keto or something like that, and he has him use his quirk that basically transfers Endeavor to right in front of Shigaraki. And mind you, Shigaraki, he's under, you know, the quirk of Aizawa. He can't use his quirks at all. He's kind of screwed, supposedly, right? And Endeavor even blasts him with a giant blast and shit like that. And it's like, this man is a monster. I mean, even looking at his physique, from coming from like a frail looking, like just a minuscule nothing, to now he's like brolic as fuck. And then we find out that even without quirks, he's managing to use his arm to keep himself in the air mobile. Like, do you understand how freaking insane that shit is? He can't use his quirks, but his body has been modified so incredibly that he's able to stay up in the air. And Endeavor's bullshit ain't doing nothing to him. Like, this is a villain. Even Dr. Maruta Shiga says, because I forget who it was that said, oh man, he's almost like All Might. And he says, well, not quite. He's almost there, but, you know, not quite. I don't want to give myself too much credit. Like, Yeah, I'm gonna give you credit, Dr. Maruta Shiga. You done good. They even say he's basically like a perfected Nomu, and there's definitely something really interesting that kind of solidifies a theory that I've had for a minute, if you really look closely into it. We're gonna get into that in a second, but, you know, them saying that he's like a perfected Nomu, and then he drops Endeavor too, like on top of all that, without no quirks, burnt up, because he just took a major blast that burnt up one of his arms. He still manages, you see Endeavor crash into the ground. It's like, this is a monster. Then we cut back to the infamous Gran Torino, which if you watched my last video, you know I wasn't too far of the Gran Torino getting in the way, just because it feels like, yo, this is the climax. I want to see Deku and Bakugou throw down. Obviously, if you see, because let's keep it real, no matter how much they trained, and we've seen a lot of training with Deku and Bakugou, and thankfully, like, that actually adds a lot when you think about it, that we saw them trained constantly throughout the last year or so of chapters. We just, even last couple years, to be honest with you, we've seen them time and time again, especially when they were interning at Endeavor's firm or whatnot, they've been training. But even then, Gran Torino, of course, yanked them away, and he starts breaking shit down like, yo, he's faster than we could have ever imagined. Like, he gets the Deku's quirk, it's all over. That's beyond worst case scenario. And Gran Torino's like, yo, you little munchkins need to stay here. So it's showcasing that they might not really be ready for this shit. And I mean, the end of the chapter, it's not telling a different story. We see what they eventually do, but it's still like, if it was just a one-on-one battle, either if it was a two-on-one battle, it's really showcasing that they don't have what it takes. Unless it was Deku, Bakugou, Todoroki, like I said in my last video, all of them having one for all, I don't see them, even with Shigaraki being able to use all his quirks and having everything at his disposal, I don't see them doing much, if anything at all, to be honest with you. Then we even get that really awesome looking page of all the giant Nomu that are on the move, and we got an explanation for that in a second. But I don't know, man, like, because we're forgetting some key things, because it's been a few chapters now, but we still have this whole giant army, Shigaraki's whole army, that is still waiting in the wings. Don't forget that there's still the League of Villains. Toga's still on the move, right? There's still Dabi. There's still Gigantomachia, the scariest of it all. So even if you manage to take down Shigaraki, because they're jumping him, there's like how many heroes? But anyway, one of the highlights, or probably the highlight of the chapter, is Shigaraki, after dropping Endeavor from them being midair and whatnot, is standing on Endeavor with one of his arms in the air, mocking him, because I think it was All Might first that did it, and then Endeavor after he had defeated that Nomu, which was that was how the last season that we just had of My Hero Academia's anime ended. And he's like, which arm is it again? Is it this one? Too bad I had to drop on you. I was like, that's the death of Endeavor's pride right there. The savage, brutal, destructive, just absolutely tragic destruction of Endeavor's pride. To be honest with you right now, that felt like a Vegeta Dragon Ball moment all the way. That felt like how they do him in Dragon Ball, where he's the most prideful. He's like, oh man, you know, I've surpassed Kakarot with you know, Endeavor surpassing All Might and becoming #1. And yo, this once frail little weirdo is now buff, standing on top of him, mocking him. That honestly, for me, even looking at it, it got me angry in terms of like, oh my god, if I was Endeavor, what I would want to do to that kid for doing that. Like, you standing on top of him, mocking his pride and everything. Like, oh, that was bad, but so good. Then we also find out, which makes sense because we've seen that giant swarm of Nomu. Shigaraki starts off saying that he's able to control his decay. We even get a flashback, and basically we see that he was able to manage, despite destroying a whole lot of shit, to save some of the Nomu. And this is right here where it gets real interesting, to be honest with you. And going back to the very beginnings of Shigaraki getting free and waking up and all that stuff, and what we see in his mind, I feel as though that this is all connected, and this is where Shigaraki potentially might rebel, and that could even lead to his demise or his defeat or whatever once he rebels. Because right now, him using everything that was given to him from, you know, All for One, and then of course Dr. Maruta Shiga, everything is working, right? But imagine there's a fallout that starts to happen, because in the flashback, those same Nomu that Shigaraki saved, it's explained by the doctor that they are programmed to obey commands by certain people. Essentially, they don't think for themselves, which really makes you wonder, because we've heard already boxes of dialogue that were kind of pushing Shigaraki to do what he's been doing up until this point. So that is more and more confirming and pushing forward. I mean, at the very least, from the standpoint of a reader, that there is something controlling Shigaraki's movements. Like, he's not completely in control. If he is in the same realm, like they in this chapter, if you think about it, they break it down like they refer to him as a perfected Nomu. We find out that he saved some of those imperfect Nomu, and you know, they were the ones that are controlled remotely by specific people and can't think for themselves. I mean, it's getting closer and closer. All it is that, well, first of all, we need to get confirmed, and Shigaraki needs to put 2 and 2 together, that he's not really in control of the show or in control of himself, that he is basically being a puppet. And that's probably also why All for One, we see in the beginning of the chapter, is smiling, because how would he really know everything that's going on? It's not like he has access to any of his quirks. He's locked up in the middle of nowhere. It's because he's really, in a way, running the show, in terms of he's all up in Shigaraki's brain. Which, by the way, nice little touch, that it seems as though when Shigaraki destroyed the airwaves that had like Endeavor and them communicating and whatnot, that he used that as an opportunity to awaken those Nomu as well. Which again, a giant army of Nomu, a giant army of the League of Villains, Shigaraki, Gigantomachia, the cards is stacked. And I just gotta say quickly, yo, Rocklock MVP, fam, MVP, because we see that the Noble and even Shigaraki are heading toward Aizawa, because Aizawa is still using his quirk to stop Shigaraki from using his quirks. And, you know, we see with all of them marching forward and lunging towards him, Rocklock jumps right in front of him, and I'm like, yo, shout out to Rocklock. That's a freaking real one right there. And it did get a little bit emotional. You see that, you know, Aizawa's thinking about his students, and, you know, that it's not time yet. They still need somebody to guide them and everything. Definitely felt like, holy shit, some death flags right there. And I don't know exactly who, if anybody, is, like, you know, major players are going to die and all of this. Like, I could see potentially even them killing off Rocklock, which that would be a shame. Like, but so far it seems as though that level, that tier of heroes who they've been killing off, like Crust and a no-name guy. And I mean, Rocklock is more notable than them, and I'd honestly be a little bit annoyed if Rocklock died. Like, Rocklock's pretty freaking awesome, so I don't want to see Rocklock die, but there's potential there. That could have been a setup as well. But I don't know, that shit was crazy when you get the back and forth when Shigaraki's like, you're in the way, and then I was like, no, you're in the way. I'm like, I'm in the way. And then the ending of the chapter, the only way seemingly that Deku and Bakugou could have gotten involved, and it's still ridiculous because you got to think, like, you got Aizawa basically erasing all of his quirks, you got a burnt arm, and all of these people jumping him, and they probably still not going to be able to do shit with Deku and Bakugou and everybody jumping him and everything. Like, oh my gosh, this chapter of My Hero Academia is so brutal. Definitely showcasing without a shadow of a doubt how freaking of a monster he is. But also a few things to note in this chapter. For starters, is heavily hinting yet again what we already assumed, and that's that All For One is the one really calling the shots in Shigaraki's head, or Maruta Shiga, or both. But I'm truly believing, especially with the beginning of that eerie beginning with All For One, it seems as though he's calling the shots. And man, with no quirks, he put down the #1 hero. What does that say at this particular point? There's nobody on the roster at the particular moment to be able to take him down, period. If the #1 hero can't do it, and the #2 hero, Hawks, is out of commission at this particular point, who's #3? I think #4 is like Ed Shot, or no, is it Best Geniuses? #3, Ed Shot. I don't know, but either way, none of the pro heroes can do shit against this guy, so I don't know how this is all going to play out. Curious what you guys think. Are Deku and Bakugou going to be able to do anything against Shigaraki? Is Aizawa going to bite the big one? I mean, you got Rocklock jumping in front of him, but yeah. And do you think that this was heavily hinting that basically at this particular point Shigaraki is essentially a perfected Nomu that is being mind controlled and mind fucked essentially by All For One, and this is the way All For One's going to use him to get out and possibly either take over his body or just use him to get to a certain point and continue on in his own body? And your overall thoughts and expectations for the next chapter 277 of My Hero Academia and beyond. This shit is so freaking crazy. It's deadly. But that's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want more from me, make sure to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram. Hit that bell to get all notifications. And if you want to follow any of my other social media, links in the description below. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. And remember the golden rule. Anime and manga for life, boy. Have an awesome day. Peace in, and Tomura. Shit is crazy. Like, I still can't believe everything that went down in this chapter. Dude is absolute monster, beyond monster. I don't know what to call it anymore, but I'm loving it.
Everything good always comes to an end. If you stab me in my back, we can never make amends. Trying to move to acceptance, hard to accept it. Mistakes like mirrors, gotta reflect it. I don't wanna fucking leave, but I gotta leave. Leave the maybes to the crazies. Maybe one day there I go, admitting something in a subtle way. No more copies, leave without a trace.